What stood out most during today's OTA? We got to see about 90% of the Saints' roster out there today. We saw some things that were pretty interesting that we kind of figured were going to happen, but we got to see them in action today. Let's begin. What was the biggest thing that stood out to you?
Man, where do we start? There was so much. It's weird because this team did not add a lot of players this offseason. They added one marquee free agent in Chase Young, who was not out there yet. And one of their 2 early draft picks isn't out there yet in Kool-Aid McKinstry. And yet I still feel like it felt so new. I mean, it's just a new offensive coaching staff and what they're doing with guys and everything. We were so eager to see who's lining up where, how are they using them different. I mean, the 2 headliners to me were Trevor Penning at right tackle and Taysom Hill at fullback, right, when we get out there. And look, we've seen people experiment and move around before. That they're not reinventing the wheel, but everything about this team this year is reinvigorating the offense. That happened when I talked to coaches. That happened when we talked to players in the locker room. It just feels like that's your hope. You wanted some hope. It did not come in the form of a head coaching change or a quarterback change or major free agent signings or a wealth of draft picks. But it's in this new offense and how it's reinvigorating a lot of people.
So for me, like the main takeaway, it was definitely Trevor Penning. It was definitely Trevor Penning at right tackle. And, you know, you've been to London before. Like when you go to London and like you're crossing the road and the traffic's coming from the opposite direction, like it's hard to just even readjust to that basic thing because you have done it, you know, left, right, left. Like you look the same way every single time when you cross the street because it's second nature.
You're not even talking about driving. You're just talking about
walking across the street. It is incredibly hard. So like when you're doing something the opposite of how you do it, it can be incredibly hard. And I was kind of locked in on Trevor throughout this practice. And I will say like, it's hard to know like if he's actually doing a good job because he's not really live blocking. There's not actual live contact. You know, there's people quit, but you can see if somebody's doing a really bad job or if they look confused or if something's like kind of too much to process or they're struggling to process it or there's an adjustment taking place. And he didn't look like that. Like he looked fine. Like there was nothing that stood out that was like, man, that was bad. That was alarming. That was, he looked fine at it. It looked like he was mentally handling the switch. Now there's going to have to be a lot of testing of that to find out if that's a true observation. But I think the very first one, like, it was fine. Like, and that's like, if you tell me Trevor Penning is fine, like that's a huge win at this point. So I felt good about day 1 exposure. Well, we feel good about day 2 exposure. Yeah. Who knows? But day 1 exposure, I think was fine. It was solid.
Here's what I like about the move. I didn't like it in theory because we've seen Trevor Penning swimming for 2 years, partly because he's behind because he's been hurt and he hasn't had the seasoning and then he lost some confidence and he's just swimming. And I'm like, why throw a position switch in on top of that? And look, a lot of coaches say it's not that big of a deal. John Benton today said, we don't think it's that big of a deal. And it's true. As he pointed out, every third offensive tackle in the league has to be able to step in at both. So automatically, you know, 32 out of the top 96 offensive tackles in the NFL have to be able to play both, you know.
That's a great point.
So coaches, like, we probably taboo it too much, and we probably taboo it too much because we covered Andrus Peat, and he was one that just could not do it, just never got over that hump. And there's a couple other guys who said it's hard, but I thought, man, that's going to be a hard thing to throw on to Trevor Penning. But somebody said something today, and it was Dennis Allen, I think, that said it, but John Benton was also explaining the move. That is like a positive part of that, which is we just want Trevor Penning to like completely feel like, no, I am completely starting. Like I'm really pushing the reset button on the video game machine. Like he's healthy now, hasn't missed a practice yet, new coaching staff, new scheme, and give him the new position too. Just like everything you used to be doing, wash and start over from scratch and rebuild yourself. Maybe that is something that's going to help him.
Yeah, well, the thing that stood out really with Penn, and it's really building on both of your points, like he's the guy who had a reputation at like a school of being like just like whatever he was, but now he's at a new school, nobody knows him, and this new coaching staff doesn't know him, but they know how to build him, and that's what they're attempting to do right now. John Benton told us, he said that all arrows are pointing up right now when it comes to Trevor Penning, so that means that that's trending in a good direction, and building off of your point of he seems more calm, I think he's more sure of himself. All right, I failed at left tackle. That part just wasn't cutting it. Now I got new people in my life. I'm trying to make it at right tackle, and I feel like I could do it because today he seemed very sure of himself. Just even going through holding the pads on the scout team for other people, like I think this is going to be a good move.
He's embracing it at least, yeah. And I mean, I think that's a good thing. So that's huge.
Again, and if this sounds like overhyped to anyone, we're talking about a guy who he just needs to get from 0 to 4. Like, we're not talking about him getting to 10.
The hardest part is getting from 0 to 1.
Yeah. And he might, like, we don't know if he's going to get there. It's just day one of this has been okay. Like, and we've seen other guys switch positions and have struggles with it mentally, physically. Just they look awkward, and it takes a while to get there. Like, he at least looked okay out there. And again, we have no idea because he isn't actually blocking anyone. But a lot of the issue with him has just been like footwork and stuff like that. And look, I think another thing that's huge just for that right side of the line is that Penning and Cesar Ruiz both work out with Duke Manyweather. So they're working out together. They aren't unfamiliar with each other. There's communication. They've been training together throughout the offseason. Whether it's lined up like that or not, I have no idea. But they're familiar with one another, and they're kind of speaking the same language. They're getting the same type of training. I think all that stuff helps. Like, because there is a huge chemistry issue on the offensive line, and especially in a scheme like this where everybody's kind of working in concert, like that stuff does matter. So that chemistry is going to help him too. So there's advantages here that I think are good for him. I think having new coaches is huge for him, all that stuff. So I don't know. Like, I'm surprised I'm saying this. I'm surprised I would feel good about him after at any point this offseason. But, like, I feel good about where he's starting from. At least
it'll
it feels
be a huge help if he's out there on the field.
It feels like he has a chance of getting off the blocks at least.
Right.
And
right.
who knows if he runs the whole race, but it feels like he's going to be able to get started.
Yeah. No, definitely. No.
Well, I was going to say, we need to get Edwin in here on one of these shows. I thought about this after Talia Edwin is the master of London driving, so we need him to explain to us how he conquered that.
No, that is insane. Like he just goes over there.
He's one of one.
Yeah, no, I remember the first time we went over there, Edwin was driving, and there was like an offer to get in the car, and I was like, hell no, like no, he's just out there driving, man. Like, it's insane to me that someone could actually do that, but. Yeah, they're there. Maybe Trevor Penning can do it too. Like, I don't know. I can't even. All I know is, like, I almost got killed like 7 times. Like, between the 2 trips, I was trying to cross the street.
What were you gonna say before?
No, but definitely with Penning, like, it seems like, I know it was just a drill and it wasn't live bullets, but he had the initial point of attack, and then his eyes immediately went to the second level to try to see where he could. It was a drill, so you automatically know where it's going. But that's just telling in terms of the confidence that he has in himself. Moving on, Mike, you also talked about Taysom Hill and the change he made. Can you elaborate more on what you saw?
Well, yeah, look, at first we saw him working with running backs and fullbacks, and they split up, and he was working specifically with the fullbacks. And it's just, believe it or not, as many positions as he's played, I'm pretty sure that's the first time we've seen that. He talked last year about how he's going to spend more time in the running back room, and then he ended up being with the tight ends during when they did 7-on-7, when they did other drills. So he's still dabbling at both positions. He downplayed it a little bit and said, we're still experimenting and see where I fit. But man, fullback almost feels like it should have been number 1 all along for him in some ways, especially from a coaching staff that we know has had some exposure to some creative usage of some fullbacks. And look, Dennis Allen said, we're not going to see him at quarterback in OTAs and minicamp, probably because Rattler needs those snaps and Hayner needs those snaps and Carr needs those snaps in the new offense. But then somebody followed up. So are you going to kind of like use him less in the QB runs that you did before? And he goes, no, we're going to keep doing that. You can start game planning for it right now. So they know what they have in this guy. And again, I just like creative new offensive coaches knowing that they have some incredible clay to work with in him.
I mean, there's a series of shows last year where I was talking about just put this man at running back. Like, the thing that I like the most about the Stafford is a lot of the stuff that just felt like common sense things. It's just happening now. And it was like, wait, that was just probably like a common sense thing. Like, giving Taysom Hill the ball behind the line of scrimmage and allowing him to get a full head of steam before he ever comes into contact with anyone just seems like such an obvious idea. Like, why would you not want to allow him to get this like head start where he can just blow people up and run people over? It's a great idea. Use him at fullback. He can block. Put him in that room. I think we talked last year, like, just put him in the running back room so he can learn all the runs. He can learn all the blocking schemes. Like, you'll probably be more effective if you know how everything's working.
Studying linebackers.
Yeah, all that stuff just seems like common sense. And then he's in the quarterback room. Like, please just move on from the quarterback thing. It's over. It's moved on. Like, that's not going to happen. It's over. Like, just put it to rest. Go up forward with everything else. They're doing it. I really, really like it. I mean, I could not feel. We'll see see how everything comes together. But like the starting point, I could not feel better about this offensive staff. Just the stuff they're doing. Everything just seems to be adding up and making sense.
Right. No, it definitely does. Like, it seems like, oh, snap. This is what all of this is supposed to look like. Like, Taysom is an athlete. He can do athletic things. He doesn't need to be penciled in just in one position. When we were talking to Rick Dennison earlier, he kind of compared, like, in my mind, I was comparing him to Taysom. You're like an offensive coach who just fits in where he needs to fit in around
Dennison's role with this team.
Yeah, he just fits in where he needs to fit in.
It was funny because Dennison was working with the fullbacks today, and he said, "Hey, I'm a rover." And when they split up the running backs, I said, "I work with the fullbacks."
Yeah,
it's an important role too. That fullback role is an important role in this offense, and if he can do it, it just opens everything up so much more. Again, it was just like, wow, this is making too much sense. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I seen him out there, I was like, yeah, this is exactly what he should be doing. Keep him the hell away from the quarterback room. Like, it's moved on. There's too many quarterbacks. That's not going to be his role.
Yeah.
Like,
to be clear, I also want QB power. I want that package. Taysom is coming in and taking the ball under center for those design run plays that with the threat of passing. But he does.
Here's the thing though, like if he's going to carry the ball 85 times this year and he's going to throw it 6, like spend your time in the room that's focusing on the 85 plays instead of the 6. Like
he can still line at quarterback when he does it.
If he's going to go out and throw a pass and he's just going to wing it, like I'd rather have him just winging those 6 plays instead of winging the 85 and just kind of getting by on the athletic ability. Like what's that look like when it's polished and like, you know, you're actually learning how the holes open up and why they're opening up and all this stuff. Like I think it can only make him better.
No question. We're going to talk more in our next segment about the conversations we have with those coaches. We got to also talk to Andrew Janocko, Keith Williams for the first time today. But the other kind of news, it was kind of news yesterday. DA but expanded a little bit more about the conversation he had with Marshon Lattimore and why he decided to have it. What was your, you still can do a little body language reading that it, like there's still wiggle room there, but did it feel closer than ever to you that Marshon's going to stay?
I mean, I've been hearing that it's kind of more likely, and I've been saying it too, it's more likely than not that he does stay because that trade offer hasn't come and nothing's come close to it. So my feeling on it is still the same though. I think that there's always a possibility that someone has an injury or a desire and they call and they offer the 2 or something like that and it gets done. Like I think the door is still wide open on that. The takeaway here is that it isn't a situation that needs to be thawed though necessarily. Like I think there's still thawing that can take place, but I don't think it's so frozen that it's just not possible that he has to go. He can't be here. They can't coexist. I don't think that's the case at all. So that's a good thing. Anything that's going to happen to kind of ease us out a little bit, I think is good. If you're able to keep him, it's the best thing for the immediate future of the team. I think it's arguable about the long-term future of the team. Like that second round pick, now that you have Kool-Aid in the building, like it could be something that, it could be valuable down the road, but I think it's a salvageable situation. And, I expect him to be on the team before. I still expect it now because, that call just hasn't come. But I don't think the door's by any means closed on anything at all, like any of those possibilities.
I consider that positive because I am also okay with the trading him for valuable draft capital, and I'm okay with him playing because he might be the most talented player on the team. I did not want we have to get rid of him and give him away for free, and I didn't want the holdout. Like those are the bad worst case scenarios. It does feel like they're going to avoid worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think whenever Lat comes back or it doesn't come back, I think it's going to work out for the Saints either way. But who else was missing from practice that stuck out to y'all? I know Alvin wasn't there. DA had some comments about that.
That always feels like a big deal. Somebody was next to me like, is it a bigger deal that Alvin's missing because they're supposed to be learning a new offense? We've heard that Alvin was one of the first people to fly in or come into town after the new staff got here and meet with them. They just mentioned during rookie minicamp when we talked to one of the coaches, Clint Kubiak was saying that Alvin has met with them multiple times and learned a lot about this offense. And as we said on yesterday's show, he's having a vacation that means a lot to him. Obviously, you follow him on social media. Back in Ghana, right? That's where he's been this whole time, where he's from, and where his family's from. But so that one doesn't bother me that much. I'm almost more like it is good to see DeMario Davis out there. Cam Jordan, even though he's not able to participate, he's out there. The attendant Taysom Hill out there. Attendance was really pretty good for me. I think everyone else that was out there, I think maybe they had a family excuse or an injury, but I think we could get close to like 95%, but once we see more OTAs, there's nothing really disturbing me on that front.
Yeah, I'd like to see everyone out there on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
I think it is important. You're trying to establish a new offense, a new culture. You're trying to dig out of this thing that everybody like supposedly was frustrated with last year. I think there's a reason Taysom's out there.
Yep.
He typically isn't, and he is right now. So I do think it's more important than usual. Now, do I think that most of the guys that aren't there can show up mini camp, training camp, ready to roll, good to go? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely possible. And I think Alvin, in Alvin's case, I believe we've seen him in like pictures they tweeted. So like he's been around throughout the offseason. We've heard that he's been around throughout the offseason. We've heard that he's met with people, but I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it really says anything. Like Tom Brady would skip these and then go win a Super Bowl. So it's not hugely important, but I think absolutely, like right now where they're at, like it's better to be there than not. Like for everybody, it's always better to be there than not. So I can't downplay it in that sense, but I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world either.
Yeah, I don't think it's the end of the world. As long as he's doing his homework and, getting the reps and stuff on the side when we're not there and working out and building camaraderie with the other people, I think that's very important. But what else, speaking of the Kubiak offense, what did you see? What did you see scheme-wise that stood out?
Man, they were motioning today, like on day one of OTAs. Like that was kind of crazy to see. Like the base install, like kind of has that stuff in it already. I mean, that was kind of something to see. One thing I noticed today with their practices is they were doing like half lines tied in with tight ends. Like that's something we haven't really ever seen them do before. Like we've seen the tight ends drill with them, but like the way they were doing it was completely different. Just the flow of practice, like it just seems, I don't know. It was just seemed more efficient almost in some ways. Just
well, they said what Dennis Allen said, they get in and out of the huddle quicker. Like that's one of the things he said he noticed about the new coaching staff.
All right, so I mean that's definitely something that's real. They were also kind of like getting some punts in without like shutting everything down for the punting, so that was a good thing to see today too. So I don't know, it's just kind of just getting used to everything overall. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some differences. Some of the concepts it's just some, I don't know, like some of these like modern route concepts you kind of see throughout the league, like. Sure. It's just kind of that's what you're seeing, and there's only so many different ways to do things. But some things that you've seen like popularized other places that you saw the Saints like trying to implement, like they're already there. So it's just a couple little things. It's just a different way of doing things.
We heard Clint Kubiak once too, and we all had to double check that. Oh, that was Kubiak.
Yeah, you let him up for lining up, Ron.
He's really a reserved guy too, but. You could hear him on that one. So there's intensity. And again, we'll talk a little more about the interviews we had, but a lot of, I can't tell you how many different offensive players said the thing that stands out first is attention to detail, and they will do it over again. They will get it right. They will go over the minutia. That definitely seems a big part of his makeup. One person I noticed on offense today was Chris Olave. It's so funny that he's become an afterthought in year 3. I think he was maybe like first or second on my list of people I wanted to see last year, probably behind Derek Carr. Obviously, in the new offense, was how's Olave looking? Is he getting stronger? Is he going to make contested catches and stuff? And now he was kind of an afterthought to me, but he might have stood out to me more than anyone on the field, even when I wasn't looking for him. I was kind of charting new guys in new positions, always trying to get the offensive line down right, see who was out on the defense, and Olave just keeps making play after play. He had 2 really strong catches in traffic, one on the sideline where he's between 2 defenders. So he really stood out to me. Jake Hayner's another guy who really stood out more than Spencer Rattler did today in their first head-to-head competition, the first of many. But he looked like the guy who had a little more seasoning today.
I'm going to do you a favor. Like when you say afterthought, you mean because like assumed great production and he exceeded,
I'm not worried
your
about
great
him.
bar.
I'm not worried about him. Yeah. I was like, yeah, Chris Olave's known commodity.
And he's exceeding expectations. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I still, I was saying a lot, and I think he almost got there if it wasn't for that little dip. Like the man is a superstar, and I don't think we talked enough about the ankle injury he was playing through last year. Like he would play games booted up, not be able to walk. You'd see him in town like dragging the leg behind him because like he wasn't getting around. And then by Sunday he's playing like because he wanted to get into the playoffs. He's out there for this stuff. Like that says something because he's very easily could be someone that could get away with staying away, and he doesn't. So. Credit to him, great player, all that stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
What stood out to you about Hayner today, man?
He looked good, confident, in control. accurate, making the throws, look good rolling out. I mean, he had a great practice, and really the juxtaposition between him and Rattler, like it couldn't have been, obviously Rattler's playing with the 3. So like there's a handful, there's a play down the sideline. Mike noticed the throw down the sideline. I can't remember who it was to, but it was a great throw. And the receiver just kind of got held up a little bit by the DB. And, I don't know, like against more.
It would have been Rattler's highlight of the day.
More skilled coverage. Like maybe there isn't the holding by the cornerback because they're actually covering and the receiver has a chance to get open, whatever. Like stuff like that happens. But he was a little bit, off. Like he was high on, I think, 3 throws. He got picked off on one by a linebacker because he stared down his target and they jumped the route. Like he looked like a rookie. He had a rookie practice against, NFL players. And we're going to see some of that. I don't really put a ton of stock into it, but Haener looked great. Like he had a great practice for sure.